Welcome. I'm Mike DeWard. I am the youth pastor here at Parkview Church, and for most of you, you've probably met me, but some of you maybe you don't know me very well, and that's okay. And so one of the things I'd like to do while we begin this is I'll tell maybe a little story about myself. But before I get to that, what I'd like to do is kind of look back at what happened last week. And last week, we started the series about Hosea. Hosea is a minor prophet. And if you don't know what that means, it's a smaller book. It's towards the end of the Old Testament. And it was written about 700 to 800 years before Jesus was born. And so what you get in these minor prophets is not that they were less than sort of prophets. They're not like, oh, they're just, it's not like they're a little kid prophet. No, it means just more that the books are shorter. They had a little less time frame in which they were being prophets, and what they did maybe wasn't as stand out as maybe say in the Chronicles or the book of Isaiah or any of that sort of stuff, where it's not this big kind of chunk of text of prophecy. And so what we get maybe is a good explanation is Hosea was a young prophet, about 17 to 19 years old when he gets the word from the Lord, and so. He ends up writing this book after everything happens, after he prophesies to Israel, and really his focus was in the northern part at this particular moment in time when he wrote, about 755 to 715 BC. The Jewish tribes or kingdoms, right, were separated into a northern and southern, and so he was actually in the capital, Samaria, and so. Like, what we have to think is, as we start to read this, okay, there are a couple of different things. Is how do we translate this into a modern sort of thinking? Because what you get is what Hosea wrote in is this mixture of narrative, right, storytelling. It's his hearing from God to go do this thing and then go actively do this thing. So that was marry Gomer and have children. And so you get this narrative, but you also get this ancient poetry. And for modern kind of like thinkers and people who are reading it, so like you and me, right, this can be a little bit more difficult of a text to maybe like understand what's exactly happening because of that mix. And so if you weren't here last week, or even if you were, it's always good to give a little recap. So in the first 3 chapters, we get our beautiful picture of Hosea. He's this young guy, and it just starts with a bang, right? Hey, go marry this. The translations is a couple of different ones that might make you a little bit uncomfortable. It's prostitute or adulterous woman or promiscuous woman, all of those. The idea here being that the text itself was saying, hey, go marry this woman who probably is not going to be faithful to you. Okay, that's really what you need to hear from that. It's not, this sort of that sort of thing, but just really to hone in on this idea that God had this plan to show what his love had been like, what his overarching theme of love. And so in the first 3 chapters, you get Hosea marrying Gomer. They have some kids. There's some prophecy in there. And then ultimately, Gomer ends up leaving him for a period of time, and he has to go and get her back. He has to actually sacrifice things that he had worked for or earned or had in order to get her back and bring her back into a marriage covenant with him. And so that kind of ends chapter 3. And so as we look in on chapter 4, it kind of switches, again, hard away from this narrative and into this figurative lawsuit against Israel. God's figurative lawsuit against Israel, the people. And so it's this idea of, right, that the Israelites have broken their covenant. Okay, that their priests, their rulers, the authorities that have been practicing within Judaism at this particular time within the nation have been doing things wrong. And so in chapter 4, there are like these 3 primary charges in which he offers. Okay? And the first is God is saying that there was no one trustworthy. The second is that they lacked kindness. Okay? And then, the third charge, okay, is the lack of knowledge of God. They stopped following and knowing God. And so as we embark on reading this together, okay, because I'm not going to get up here, I'm not going to give this super long talk when we're in these small groups. What we're going to end up doing is your small group leader is going to start. And they might expand on some of the things that I've just talked about. but then you are going to open the Bible. Okay, whether that is on your phone or if you feel comfortable, we'll have some Bibles with us that we've disinfected, we've tried to clean up as best we can, and you physically open to Hosea and you read from the Bible, because there's nothing that we can do that supplements actually reading the Bible. If all you get while you're here is just, oh, maybe Mike gets up and says something nice and I really like that. Or maybe Sarah gets up and says something nice about Jesus and I really like that. Or Lindsay or Josh or Andrew or whoever else, the answer is you're not actively learning how to do this outside of this place. And surprisingly enough, some of you guys are going to leave this place when you graduate high school, which is crazy. I know, I can't believe it. But if that's all you've ever learned is that somebody else tells you about the Bible, it's not good enough. So what we're going to do here for the next, I don't know, it might be a half hour for some of you. It might be 15 minutes. It might be an hour. This is a really good text. And what I want you to do is really wrestle, okay, with what the text is saying. Don't necessarily put yourself into the story, but really try and think about what was God saying to the Israelites then, and then how maybe does that apply to my life now? Because here's the thing about problems. It's just because they happened in ancient times doesn't mean they don't happen here today. Israel's story is our story. And so as we embark on this time together, I just ask that you really open your minds and you get ready to just really grab a hold of what Jesus is going to tell you today.